No, she said she had not appointment. All right, I'd like to call the Education Accountability meeting to order at 5:01 on February 10th, 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that we call the meeting to order.
All right, meeting to order. Can I get a motion to, Chair seeking a motion to adopt the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we adopt the agenda as printed.
All those in favor? Aye. Oh, second that? You second that? Aye. All right, there's, excuse me, approval of the minutes. Everyone have a chance to read the previous minutes from January 13th meeting. Chair is seeking a motion to approve the minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve the January 13, 2020 meeting minutes as printed.
I second that. All those in favor? Aye. None opposed? We'll move on to item 4.0, discussion items, handbook and RTI update.
Thank you.
Appreciate
So what I've given you is basically just an excerpt from the Code of Conduct. It is complete. We have finished it with the committee. And it has been sent to legal for review. So I didn't want everybody to look at the entire thing right now because you might have some of the same concerns legal will find. I didn't want to get some of the redundancy, but I wanted to kind of give you a good idea of what we've done. So if you look at this, what I have done is pick a few of the items that have probably the most change, and I also put everything that wasn't in the previous code in blue. So when you look at the blue writing on this, the blue is new. So if you look on the very first page, it talks about the restorative principles, and then you see the tiers, the tier 1, the tier 2, the tier 3. And so when you start looking at this, it starts with an explanation of how it guides into the rest of the items. So you'll see that we have the restorative practices, talking about building strong relationships. Again, everything's in detail. Then the tier 1. And the tier 1 is basically going to be anything handled at the classroom level that doesn't make it to the principal's office or the administration office. And then you'll see tier 2, which will make it to the administrative office, but it could be some of the lower item things such as parent-teacher conference, a student conference, in-school suspension. And then when you get to the tier 3, the way we marked it, tier 3 is anything that's out of school and more. So when you start looking through this, and you will have to, and that's another reason why we didn't want to give it to you, it's not formatted and everything right now, but if you just turn over and look, you'll see one of the big ones is the assault. We have several categories of assault that were not there before. So you have assault on injury, then you have assault on student, then you have assault on staff, and then you have assault with injury, assault on student, assault on staff. So we've made a lot of changes trying to make sure that everything is covered and is given the attention needed. So for instance, look at the first one, assault on staff, no injury. You'll see where it says first offense, you'll see a T1 and a T2 next to it. That's because, again, those kind of things are going to be happening at the classroom as a T1, but it's still basically going to be covered. And then the T2 is going to be what the administrator might do. And then if you look even under that first offense down there, you'll see there's a T3 in there for the 1 to 10 days out of school suspension and referral to the superintendent's hearing. And then you'll see sequential offenses. It's not a T1 because, again, if it happens again, it's not going to be handled in the classroom. It's going to be sent to the administrator. And then you'll see there's still some choices for the T2, and then you'll see again that the T3. Like one of the difference on this one, you'll see on the T3 on the first offense is 1 to 10 days out of school suspension.
Which one are we looking at?
Where are we at there?
Oh, on the assault on the first, I told you that second page right here.
Page 2.
If you look at assault on student.
Oh, no, you're on student, no
Right.
injury?
Right here, if you look right here.
Okay, student with injury?
Right now, no injury.
No injury.
Right now, no injury. Again, I'm just picking a few of these to kind of explain to you how things go.
Okay, I was wrong.
So when you look at that, you'll see again the T1, the T2, and you'll see the T3 for the 1 to 10 days out of school. And then you see the subsequent offenses, you'll see again, it's not a T1 because a subsequent offense is not gonna be handled in the classroom, it's going to be sent to the office. And then you'll see, like on the T3, you know, you'll see on the first offense, it's 1 to 10 days, but if it's a subsequent offense, there's not an option of 1 to 2 days. You'd have to go at least 3 days out of school. So that's the way basically all of these have been scheduled. If it is, you know, something with an elementary, you see middle and high, you see first and second offense, you see subsequent offense. So this is just kind of a little bit of a sampling of the code of conduct, the way that we have as a committee gone through and tried to make sure that we have accountability as well as the administration has some options of what they feel needs to happen with the occurrence. So, I mean, again, it is just one of those ones where, I mean, I could take you through much more of it if you'd like, but this is just, again, a sampling of the handbook that has been submitted to legal for their review. And then once we get it back from legal with their comments, notes, we'll be ready to present it to the board.
Are there any questions in terms of the differences in the tiers on the cover page? So page 1, does the committee understand the differences between tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3? Because then that understanding then really builds on the consequences you see within the manual.
Can we take a moment just to read through it?
Absolutely.
So again, these are, like I said,
Okay, I got a question on bullying and cyberbullying. That would include Facebook, that would include Twitter, that would include all that when you talk about bullying and cyberbullying.
correct. And like I said, you notice it's in blue because there was a lot of changes to that one. I mean, as you look down, you'll see like the first few pages were kind of copied and there was a lot of changes. And then you'll see it skips over to page like 14 and 18. Because this, again, is just a sampling. But these are just some of the ones that I wanted to share with you that had some of the bigger changes to it. Such as the technology, all of that is new. And then the weapons, to be honest, we did reduce down to 2 versus 4 offenses and basically just broke it into weapons with a threat and weapons without a threat to make it easy, trying to make it very simple for the administration on how to deal with it.
Point of clarification, remind me of next steps from today's committee meeting.
This has been submitted to legal for their
The
review.
entire document
The
or
entire
just these
document.
pages?
No, the entire document. This is,
Okay.
again, just a sampling. So they have it, and as soon as we get it back from legal, we will be ready to present it to the full board
For first reading?
for the first reading, right? To see, they'll let everybody, again, but you may have some concerns that, to be honest, when legal looks at this and says, no, we need to make changes to this prior, so we'd like to get it back from legal prior to sharing it with the entire board.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, you know, we'll have a chance to see what they suggest on some of the changes and so forth. So they, in fact, like I said, they had it, and I don't know if it will be ready for February or not, because I don't know if we'll get it back by this Thursday, but it definitely should be ready for March, if not. But the good news is, like I said, it has been completed as far as through the committee and giving their quote draft to legal for review.
If we have suggestions or
That's what I was
concerns,
gonna ask,
do we send that to
Dr. Skinner, it would help if the committee had a full copy of the document. And so it's gonna help in the presentation to the board in a first and a second reading to have the support of this committee to move it forward, that they've seen the entire manual.
Do you want to see it prior to getting it back from legal then?
So that's what I was asking. So after you hear from legal, make the suggestions from legal, then you're gonna send the full document to the committee. If that's the case, then that makes sense.
Well, that's what I was
Okay.
planning to do, was get it, but again, you're right. I mean, I didn't mention from the committee prior to the board, but I just wanted to make sure that we got back from legal before we did anything. That was the
All right,
first
so
part.
you'll see edits after legal, since the entire document. And
then
so,
we
which
have-
means it may extend us into,
I think we should
Maybe.
have said we should get it before and then,
you'll get it before the board gets it.
Before the full board gets
right,
there.
because we had to submit it to them.
Which means the full board isn't gonna see it until
Until
April.
March. Well,
No,
you don't think so?
because you'll have another educational accountability meeting in March. That's when they're gonna get it.
Can we get it before then? Like if
Yeah,
legal
yeah.
gets it
Yeah.
after next week, would there be a way for us to get it before the next meeting?
And so then is there a commitment from this committee to provide any feedback to Dr. Skinner prior to the March meeting?
That's gonna be my question. What happens with, like, when we have our feedback, if there's feedback, who does that go to? Does it go to legal? Does it go to you all?
It would go to Dr. Skinner.
Okay.
And I'll share it with legal at that time too.
I would have probably would have had gave us all the thing, even when you send it to the legal. The committee could have had it along with legal.
Like now?
So then, yeah, we could
But
have
see,
seen
that
it.
would have been two different groups making edits. It would be, I understand what he's doing in terms of why send it to you and there would have been changes from legal, and then it could have been something that you would have already, that you would have had a question on and it can already be addressed.
But we'll get it from legal
Before.
after legal.
I mean, I
That'll be a
can,
couple days,
as
probably a week.
soon as I hear back from legal, I can share the document with you even
Yes,
prior
yes.
to the next committee meeting if need
We
be.
have more time. We
That's
got
what
plenty
I'm
of time
hearing,
between
they
the time
would
we
like
receive
to
it.
see it.
Before the board meeting.
Yeah.
So I can do that. When I get it back from legal, with their edit, then I can share that with you
Okay.
prior to even our committee meeting, so
Yeah.
that you'll have a chance to look at it prior to the committee meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, then we'll
So
see
then we
any
can-
suggestions.
And
Sorry,
then you,
excuse
me.
then you can, then that way you can see if you're, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the few that you have from this sampling, if that's already been addressed by legal.
Okay.
One of my other concerns is I know that in the last meeting we were talking about how a lot of the staff have not had training for the restorative practices.
Right.
And I'm seeing this, so in order all this to come together, we're gonna have everyone do some of these things. I know that's some.
At the beginning of the school
Right,
year
of the
next
school
year,
year, right.
prior to school starting, with those few days, I've already been in touch with Ms. Rowe, and we are going to have restorative practice. It's probably going to be about a 2-hour training that we've been talking about for all staff, beginning of the school year.
And will that directly correlate with with the tier one with
Yeah.
the
It'll be the restorative practice and the tiers. That's what the training will be on.
this
We still have to find somebody that will
Mhm.
provide the training. I mean, stuff, but we'll do that after, of course, it's approved by the
Right.
board.
because this gives very specific interventions that I just want to make sure. I want us to make sure whoever bringing for the training isn't kind of just giving it's kind of a cookie cutter kind of training, but it's specific to the things that are outlined in here. You know, like with a lot of the values, with the harm circles, the way the mediation. Just to make sure that it meets our needs.
Right, the training will be on this paragraph right here on that front page, what you're talking
Okay.
about, the restorative practice and
Mhm.
the 3 tiers. That's primarily what the training will be on.
Okay.
They won't take that, I mean, I'm sure they'll take them through parts of the handbook to explain it, but it's not going to be a training on the entire handbook. It's going to be a training on that first page with the restorative practice
Right.
and the tiers, because that's really the big new piece in
Mhm.
how this looks.
I would also just like to make a suggestion of like continuing education or continuing training throughout the year, so it's not just that one time at the beginning of the school year. That they receive a training a few times throughout the year. I know we have those built-in professional development days on the calendar for next school year, or we may have teachers come in mid-year who may miss the training, so just an opportunity to refresh and make sure new teachers can receive that training, since we have that consistency across the board, so make sure it's implemented as effectively as possible.
Have we already approved the schedule for next year already?
I mean,
Yeah,
the
that's
calendar,
a couple months ago.
but as far as the training, there was just so many days up front, and then like I said, Ms. Rowe and Ms. Franklin and some of the others actually look and see what kind of professional development is going to occur during those first few days. And like I said, we've already been in touch, and so there are going to be days, and it'll have to be days to be honest, because everybody in the district has to go through this, but it'll be portions of the day.
When we talk about the wraparound services, the wraparound support, can you speak to that a little bit?
Wraparound support really kind of deals with, in fact, I'm going to share a little bit of this when we get down to the glows and grows.
Okay.
But basically, the dental services, the trauma-informed care, the vision, just the other services that help students basically overcome the day-to-day challenges that they have so that they can concentrate on their education. So all those wraparound services, again, things that, to be honest, we may take for granted, but our students don't. So we do look at this. We make sure that they have a screening, at the elementary level. We have 2 different companies that do screenings. We're making sure that, again, we've had SWOPE start this year, going to all the schools. We also have Rediscover. We have Cornerstones for Care. So those are kind of the wraparound services that address some of the challenges, again, our students have, so that, again, hopefully they'll be able to focus on their education and not have some of that trauma or some of the other challenges, again, dental, vision, things like that, that will could hinder their academic success.
Okay, I'm going to say one more question. It talks about an accountability plan. Is that different than like a behavior plan, or can you explain?
With the accountability, basically, the Code of Handbook is going to basically have the accountability plan. That's what the tiers are for. You have a tier 1, everything that is tier 1 is going to be handled at the classroom level. And then the tier 2 is going to be sent. And again, when you start looking at some of these, just turn the page, just if you would, to this page, and just look at the very first one that says assault on student, no injury. You have elementary, you have first offense. Again, you can have something as simple as a principal-student conference, or it could escalate to the parent-guardian conference, which typically, anytime you have a student-parent conference, the parent's going to be called as well to say, hey, I just saw a little Carl in the office today, this is what it was about. But also it could have in-school suspension, or it could have something to do with the restorative practices, especially for an assault on a student. Then it goes to tier 3, you do have that range of 1 to 10 days out of school suspension, or if it's serious enough, it could even go to a superintendent's referral on that first offense. So there's a long range of practices to hold the student accountable. And so that's kind of what the accountability plan.
Okay, because to me, it reads almost like an individual plan per student. And so I didn't know if that
one could be developed if need be. But again, it's not like every student will have one to start with. But again, for instance, when we have students that are sent to Burke and come back to the schools do have individual accountability plans for the students at that point. So something could be developed. But you only develop one if needed.
If needed, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I would like to make a suggestion on something. Somehow we can try to figure out a way of tracking how effective is our restorative practice in our elementary and also secondary schools. The punishment that was given, so that therefore we can look at the data and say, okay, well when we had this area around this time, they was doing this around this time of the year, and we noticed that it might be an increase around this time of the year. So that can help us channel some of these things and behaviors that's going on right now, because looking at the effectiveness of everything, so that therefore we can critique our own stuff to see what all we can tighten up.
I can respond to that. it is looking at the data and discipline data in terms of out-of-school suspensions and in-school suspensions and what we reported to the board in terms of discipline data. We saw a decrease in elementary in some of our buildings. There was an increase at secondary level, which is why there's been an emphasis in the reset at Smith Hill and continuous monitoring of the data. Overall, we've seen a decrease in the number of superintendent hearings, and that's been over a course of 5 years. There's been a decline in that, and so we are looking at that data, and we've shared and reported it out to the board.
I just, what's been going on, as we all know, as we've seen in our emails a lot, just looking at the effectiveness. We might have to tune it up a little bit more, because I know there's not a lot of referrals being written no more. We're trying to. I'm just looking at what I'm seeing now.
Based on what? How do you make that statement?
I'm just looking at. I'm trying to go to keep it, because I'm trying to basically just fine tune everything, and then I'll just leave it at that. I'm looking at things that I've seen when I go into the buildings and I hear, but I don't want to go by hearsay. I want to see. At the same sense, like I said, we all see our emails, and I just want to. Just looking at our emails and what has happened that's been going on within the year, we need to probably fine tune some more things, maybe.
I think,
And maybe it's not what I'm saying, tracking.
The only thing I was gonna point out is, again, we do track that, as Dr. Cardinal said, we track it every year, we look at it, we discuss it, and there has been a little bit of a rise this year at the secondary, again, the reset at Smith Hill. But, again, what you have to realize is, you do see those emails, but that's a small percentage of the population. The majority of the population, there aren't. Even like the reset at Smith Hill, there are over 800 students with no referrals whatsoever. But you do have that small percentage that really have one or more. And then you have a very small percentage that may have even 3, 4, 5 or so. So when you see some of those emails, it's an anomaly in the data based on those outliers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an excellent point. When you think of, we serve 5,600 students in the district. And so the emails that are being sent are emergency situations when police is involved, a child was injured, or the situation may arise to a level that causes media attention. We're required to share that information with the board, but you aren't receiving 5,600 emails for each student that we serve. And so we're required to share that, but we have to remember those are isolated incidents that occur over time. Students aren't perfect. They're going to commit or behave in a manner that does not align always with the expectation, but again, it isn't 5,600 students that are involved in those instances.
And then when they do have the incidents, that's the need for the student code of conduct. And, again, some of the concerns that you're talking about is the reason why we've been revamping it and revisiting it to make it even more effective.
I guess a better way of saying it is those more frequent students that are getting more. I want to see the trend. Like, what is working? Like the restorative practice. Like if I'm in trouble all the time.
I think with the new code of conduct being rolled out and already keeping track of these things, just having a baseline data of how things are before implemented, and then just kind of keeping track of those after. Then we can assess if the changes
That's what I'm saying.
are effective or not.
Right.
But that'll come at the time. So, but the data's already being tracked. And it's just a matter of kind of wait and see. And I guess that could be something we talk about during the committee regularly. The trends, the data trends, as this is implemented during the next school year.
Right. That's what I'm.
Any other questions or comments? Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, we'll move on to item 4.2, RTI intervention data.
Okay, I'm just double checking, so I believe that's in relationship to our iReady data?
Well, no, so with the RTI.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because we have both. We have
Right.
academic and behavior, which the tiers that Dr. Skinner just spoke about really speaks to kind of building in that RTI for the behavior. And then, of course, I've talked about the RTI plan for our academic supports. when I shared the plan the last time we met. So just wanted to make sure I'm able to answer whatever questions we have about RTI.
Yes, so when I initially put it on the, when we talked about it and put it on the agenda, it was wanting to know, it's more specific data. How many students are in tier 1 have been moved to tier 2 and tier 3? How many students that were in tier 2 and tier 3 were moved down to tier 1, tier 2?
So yeah, that was what we had planned to share in March. I mean, I have some, I can share a little bit of what I have because we have completed the testing, so I do have a little bit of information. Just didn't know if I was going to share that now or wait until we share all of our data for the board.
Well, yeah, so that was a point that I had missed, that because I remember we talked about all the testing wasn't done at all the schools, and so the data wasn't available. And so in my mind, I didn't push back the date to have it complete, and so I said, oh, well, we didn't have it last time, we'll have it this time, not recalling that it's going to take time to compile the data. So I understand if it's not a complete report,
Yes.
but if you do have something
So we
shared,
finished,
that'd be great.
we finished on the 7th, so we just completed last Friday. So what I have is pretty rough, but just in general, our goal was to see increases, obviously, in tier 1 across the district. So of course we wanted to see that, and then we also wanted to see a decrease, particularly in those students that are in tier 3, which is kind of our lowest tier, 2 or more grade levels below. And so our goal would be to have between 5 and 10% increase, and I can share that in math we did see at least 10% of an increase in our tier 1, and I'm pleased to see that we also saw at least the 10% decrease in tier 3. So really those tier 3 students moved to tier 2, and then we had some tier 2 students move to tier 1. Then we have a breakdown of all the grade levels and schools and so forth. And so in March, the breakdown will really show all of the percentages and then show a comparison from fall to winter. So you'd be able to see how many kids from the fall to this last testing period moved from one tier to the next.
Okay.
And we'll see that across grade levels.
Okay. Can I ask that within that excuse me, if you have the information about specific interventions of some of the things that are being done within those tiers, just so we can have an idea of, sometimes the intervention, we don't always know what those look like. So just kind of some.
So those are in the RTI plan that I shared. So those are outlined already in writing. The only difference is what the activities look like. So
right, that's
kids
the
are
question.
given specific activities, and that varies based on whatever the targeted area is. And so a teacher report would show all of the students, and then it would show the areas of deficit. So then the teacher would be able to go in and identify the activities that really align to that skill, and then they would use those activities to help intervene for each student. It's really hard for me to kind of do that for like the district, but what I could do is just kind of show an example of, I could go to a student that maybe is a student that's in tier 3, and maybe show what an activity would look like for that student. I could pull something like that. But the overall RTI plan is what really shapes what teachers should be doing. What should they do with students who are in a certain tier? They should be having small group support, a number of minutes they should have that support, and then students that will be identified for progress monitoring. So that's outlined in the plan, but the specifics would be really differentiated for the needs of the kids.
So I guess my next thing would be, what was the goal set for us as the district to see what tier 1, tier 2 was supposed to be for now?
So we
in
always
each area.
So we always set a goal. Our district goal, end of the year goal, is at least 50%. We want at least 50% of the kids to be at or above grade level. So it's a high goal. We try not to lower that because we want everybody to shoot for what we believe we should be able to do. And then we created a soft goal, which is the 25%, given where we started as our baseline. So our baseline was pretty low with it being a new assessment, and we knew the assessment was more rigorous than what our students had taken previously, so we had to consider that. So our soft target was a 25% for this first round of testing. And if you can recall, for the fall, in reading in math we had a 9% to start with in the fall, and then for reading we had a 13% that we started with, and so
That were at or above grade level?
We're making
at
it.
or above
Okay.
grade level. That was in the fall,
Mm-hmm.
and so we set a soft target for at least 25% for this winter.
So we look like we might be on track for the soft baseline for this that came up.
I will say that we look like we're on target in reading. Our reading's a little bit better than what we're seeing in math. We're right at about 20% for math and 25% for reading.
And then what was the social study? Wasn't that on there too?
Just the reading and math for high rating.
Okay, thank you. We look forward to the full report in March.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? All right, moving on to item 4.3, academic incentives, such recognition. So that was a question that I had. I know we do a lot of things for behavior supports and incentivizing, especially on the elementary level, different things. We often reward positive behavior. But the community was like, what do we do for academic incentives for students?
Okay, so I wanted to just share like a good way of being able to access this on the website. So I just want to show, I'll use Truman as an example of what, and the reason I wanted to do this, lock me out already, is so you can see that all of the parents have access to it too. So here, I'm just going to go in here to all our parental involvement plans. And so these are all of our parental involvement plans. Every school is required to have one. And this is really a plan that each school will develop to make sure parents are involved and parents know exactly what's occurring at every school.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have all of these for every site. I'm just going to click on Truman as an example. And so on here, it really should, it'll show all of the opportunities for parents to support academic achievement. So this is the same format for every building. I'll try to see if I can make that a little bit bigger. And so, for example, they should have quarterly celebrations for all of the students. That's what we should see, and parents should know exactly when they can come up to participate in those events. So those are incentive type things. But we also include when are there opportunities for them to just get information about academic achievement. So you'll see on here, and I use this one, it's a really good example of all of the opportunities, starting at the very beginning of the year with conferences and so forth. And so that doesn't include just informal opportunities if parents just want to come up and have a conference or talk about student progress. And so it also goes into progress specifically, and so this is an example of when the progress reports are shared. So parents are just clear about when information is shared about how students are doing along the way, and then just other community involvement activities. So principals are turning these in kind of early in the year, and so they will update them as needed if dates change and so forth. Sometimes we have to move a date around because of weather or whatever the case may be. But this is something we've always done. It is a way to help schools stay on track with making sure that parents are afforded these opportunities to not just hear about student progress, but to also celebrate student academic achievements. And so that's just one example of what that should look like. And it varies at schools, just kind of the extent of other things that they may be doing, because sometimes teachers are doing classroom incentives for progress or students mastering benchmarks and so forth. So those are classroom things, but these are more building related opportunities where parents can come up and celebrate with students.
Awesome. Yeah, I didn't know how to access that. I didn't know that was available, so I think it's great that the public
Yeah,
parents
that's
have
why
access.
I thought I
to
should
those.
just go ahead and do it from the website.
Mhm.
But it's sitting here under parents and students, and then it's under federal programs, and it's under federal programs because it is a requirement as a school that's a Title I district, that we make sure that these opportunities are posted on the website publicly for parents to access.
Awesome.
And printed. So there should be, parents receive a hard copy of this, and we have to post it on the website. We've done this every year.
Now, do we have a national juniors honor society for the junior high? I know we had a society for in
Elementary.
I mean, not in elementary, but in
We have it district-wide, high school, middle school, and every elementary. And we've had that, I believe, for the past 3 years. I know the high schools always had it. I'm just speaking to my tenure. And I think after my second year, we initiated, I think the secondary schools had it prior to me coming, middle and high school. And then we implemented elementaries having National Elementary Honor Society. I want to say my second.
I think we've had it 4 years.
4 years? Okay, so after my first year.
Would you be able to speak to any of the programs for the high school as far as academic incentives or recognition?
Let's see. And they probably, I'm sure, have added some additional things. So it looks like, see there are opportunities for sharing information with parents. Let's see their career experiences. Let's see as many awards assemblies or anything like that. Senior parent meeting. I think at the senior parent meeting they might do some recognitions. Team success. I'm not sure all of those opportunities are. I do know that, high school students and awards assemblies are a little tricky.
Right.
They start to get a little tricky once you get to middle school, where they're not as thrilled about it as they are in the elementary buildings, as
Right.
it relates to being recognized for academic achievement. I guess the coolness wears off a little bit after
Yeah, exactly.
get to middle school. But I know that they do have certain events where students are recognized. I think it's just in a different format, not necessarily like quarterly assemblies like we do at the elementary
Okay,
level.
yeah, because that was gonna be one of the. It's just a common trend, like they do get a little too cool for school assemblies, and pep rallies don't really excite them as much as it does in
But like
elementary
getting
school.
up and coming to get
Right.
recognized in front of
But I
the
did want to make sure, I do believe that our high school students do still need some incentive to, not necessarily a certificate or a party, but something to acknowledge and reward them for their work in the classrooms.
Right.
It definitely will be different than on the elementary level.
And so I think about, I don't know, and this may be for like their scholarships and things that with other attainments that they have. I know that they do display that and kids are recognized. I just think it comes in a different format, but that's just one that popped in my head right away. I remember the students that information being shared, the students that received scholarships, and then we had different amounts when we get to a certain amount. And then I want to say, before testing, there's a big push around academics, and then students in the high school really trying to encourage other students to do their best when they're taking their assessment. So another way of them pushing each other and really emphasizing the importance of academic achievement and doing well on the ELC. So those are two that popped up in my head right away.
And
They had the theme last year, better than basic, right?
Yes, they did.
Where the
Which was very, I think, from what I've heard, very impactful, and the students received it well from their peers.
And I was going to say, as they do get scholarships, they definitely announce those at the school level, and then they have the culminating kind of award program at the end prior to graduation. They have one for senior night. Talk about all their scholarships and awards.
How you doing, Mr. Right on top.
He did
Right
not anticipate coming in at this moment.
How you doing this evening, sir?
Again, the high school is structured so that there are things that are there. The newspaper, the journalism side, where honor rolls are posted on the walls or in that publication. I mean, those kinds of things that don't make it necessarily public in the school, like, hey, we're gonna recognize you with a certificate, we're gonna make everybody watch, but rather it be
It's pushed out to
print,
us.
pushed out to, and, I mean, we do announcements that recognize, accomplishments. So it happens all the time, and then each house also has a celebration.
Hopefully
Okay.
in their newsletter. We were just talking about opportunities to celebrate academic achievement at the high school level and what that looks like. That's it. Have the perfect person in place.
We also, this past week, we also sent our newsletter out in Spanish, Urdu, and Arabic.
Oh, wow.
So that we, now it's gonna be, I think it's gonna be a giant task for Miss Kumar.
Oh,
It's gonna be a giant task to do it every week. So I don't know, hopefully she can keep up with the volume of it. So we're trying to make sure we connect with parents to keep them informed.
Yes, sir.
Because then that weekly newsletter has upcoming events and celebrations.
Awesome. Well, I just think that's really important for our older, more mature students to be able to, again, be recognized, but also be incentivized to kind of motivate them. They don't, some of the motivators used for our younger students, who are the majority of our district, don't motivate our high school students. Just want to make sure we have things in place to keep them motivated and encouraged for high academic achievement. I think it's so important. Thank you all for that information.
Well,
And
just
I-
one other thing.
Oh, yes.
Again, in high school, their academic achievement usually will lead to something, like an internship at Cerner or a placement at Herndon. So all of those kids, if we can catch them early on, know that this is where it's going to lead. So that's another incentive.
And I would also add just, their club affiliations is really important as well, because it really not only highlights academic, but it also highlights other skills and talents that students have. And so leadership potential for our student council and our robotics and Lego League. I mean, we have a host of other opportunities where students are really displaying their talents and skills because they are part of these clubs and activities. So that's another way to demonstrate that too.
Thank you for that.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am. Are there other questions, comments, concerns about academic achievement, incentives, and recognition? All right, moving on to item 4.4, grows and glows. This is an item that I was adding there. I do this when I kind of work in these different groups. To help us kind of know, see where we are, to reflect on our current work, and give us kind of a soft guide to the future work that we're going to do. So it's kind of, everybody's working with kids, 2 stars and a wish, and plus and minuses, grows and glows, all the fancy bells. I just like the grows and glows. And so I wanted to say, one, glow, to talk about, like we just mentioned, the area where you've had direct impact or influence that you believe has positively impacted our district. And then, so if we need like a minute to reflect on that, or I don't know if you already kind of have them ready to go. And then would also be just a brief moment talking about our grows, areas that we would like to either get better in that we're doing now, or just another area that we haven't touched that we would like to impact for next school year, if that makes sense.
I was outside the door. I was texting you, telling you I'm outside the door. Come let me in. I left my key.
I didn't get them. Sorry, I was.
Voicemail full. Hey, Mr. Ray,
Thank you,
what's
sir.
up?
Good.
I got the card. Okay. Ooh.
I'm so
Hey,
sorry.
Miss
to-
Ray.
Sherry, do you want me to go ahead and?
She done made a whole package. Dr. Skinner prepared. Dr. Skinner trying to show everybody up.
Well, I will tell you, this is one of the ones that, to be honest, I was planning on doing this anyway, and so it just kind of fell in. This is, kind of do this about halfway through the year, give a student service report on kind of what we are. And some of this definitely kind of goes along with what you're talking about, such as like, you talk about wraparound services, they're kind of highlighted here, the SWOPE health services. From now to the end of the school year, every Thursday from 9 to 12, we're going to have somebody from SWOPE going around on a different schedule to all the schools, Then you see some of the things we've already done throughout the year, like the Score One van that happened in October. We had over 100 students that went from the schools, got their vision tested. If needed, they actually got glasses that were free at no charge to them, from that Kansas City University of Medicine and Biosciences. And then the Cornerstones for Care is one of the new wraparound services that we've just been implementing the last couple of months. And we have two things with that. One is the family therapy. And so it kind of gives you some ideas about that. I mean, so this is just kind of, again, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a small book, to be honest. But it is something for you to go through and just see. On the third page, you'll see the Baptist Trinity Lutheran Legacy Foundation. We've gotten this 3 years in a row. This year, it actually went from 12 to 18,000 plus for different needs for our nurses to kind of help with them. The Loads of Love program is in here. Our attendance works. Dr. Cargyle and her families gave basically food and so forth to 3 families at Christmas time. So that's in here. Our Impact Hickman Meals, which basically, what we get for Project Impact with our homeless families are in here. The Winter Wonderland dinner that we have with McKinney Bento families in December. Then we start talking about the truancy referrals and kind of giving the basics, which we go through all of our nurses. All of our schools participate in that to give just necessities to students that need them. Then we talk a little bit more about the technical stuff. The last part is really just numbers of participants, at different contract schools. We talk about how many students that we've had. We've been reducing those numbers. We talk about our 504 numbers. We talk about our special education numbers. So again, just a book of information, but a lot of it really is glows. It really is kind of some bragging rights on just how well we have been doing with the district this year. So again, I do plan on actually sharing this with the full board this February, and just pointing out 1 or 2 small things to share with them. I'm not going to spend all the time with it. I'll spend maybe literally 3 to 5 minutes at the most with it.
Okay. I noticed I've been looking at it, and I see the trauma smart that goes with the grief, also of some of the students and the parents that have children here.
So what's your question?
Trauma smart, is that okay? Do we have any type of grief program? Is that followed under the trauma smart? Well, with students that have lost maybe their brother and sister, and they still attend here.
When a family member passes or somebody in the family passes, we actually have a lead counsel get together with the other counselors in the district and provide support at that school for them. It's not necessarily a grief program per se, but we do address that through our counselors. Now I will say part of the grief process is included in trauma, but it's not like it's a program per se just for that. Handle grief is part of the trauma-informed process.
Awesome. We definitely appreciate this book of a glow that you provided. This is awesome information. I do think it's important for us to pat ourselves on the back sometimes and celebrate ourselves and let the community know the good things that are going on, and then just personally just to know that we have made an impact on other people. Ms. Franklin?
I did not do a book.
Where's your book?
I do have to be clear, I've been planning this for several months.
Okay.
This is something I've been working on since probably November.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, so, but I read this to identify a particular glow because just currently we are right in the middle of unveiling all of our maker spaces at the elementary sites, and so I think that that's a really big glow. And if you're on Twitter, I'm not sure, I know you're on Twitter.
Yeah, I've seen them all week. I'm loving them.
We're having big opening celebrations at every site, so you can see what the maker spaces look like, and teachers are invited, and Dr. Smith has organized for them to have cinnamon rolls and so forth. But it is, in culmination with our district-wide STEAM project-based learning expansion, and really expanding the STEAM and project-based learning to all of our sites. So we start with the elementary sites. They'll have all of their maker spaces open, and then the secondary will have theirs. And they're really, really nice spaces. A great investment for our kids. And in addition to that, we just came off of our STEAM PBL HMC 1 month. And so all of our teachers were sharing examples of STEAM and project-based learning activities. We had tweets from every single site, so there wasn't one school that wasn't represented. Even pre-K kids were showing their STEAM. And I know you commented on a few things. Your daughter was actually on one of the tweets working on an experiment. So we're really excited about that. And then we had our CNI day where all of our library media specialists partnered with our innovators and teachers, and they conducted the professional development for the staff this month. And when I tell you sitting through and watching our teachers and our LMS present to the staff, it not only was it a proud feeling, but it really was a testament to the expertise of a lot of our teachers, and they enjoyed it. And just seeing the collaboration and how they were able to receive the instruction from the teachers, their colleagues, it just made for a really nice atmosphere. And I think it was, I won't say better received, but in a way it felt like it was better received because they knew each other.
Yeah.
And then we had schools partner together, so it also built collaboration amongst teachers. So that's just one thing that happened this month, but I think it was very impressive, and it's ongoing. And then the other thing is just speaking to an opportunity. In our conversations, obviously, about instruction and data, we are currently in the process of doing our walkthroughs really focused on literacy. And so right now we're scheduling walkthroughs in all of our elementaries to go into all of the K through third grade classrooms to really look at all of the instructional components related to building literacy, aligned to the professional development that we've been doing for the past 3 to 4 years. And so what are the fruits of our labor? So that's what we're focused on right now. I mean, honestly, we cannot look at our reading scores and not say this has to be an ongoing priority. Can't just do some reading PD and then pull back. We've got to just stay on top of it consistently. The one thing I will share is the last walkthrough that I went to was at Truman. And when I tell you some of the things that I saw in those primary classrooms, those teachers, I really left feeling, and the consultants were there too. So we have some consultants, and just their feedback about how they've noticed the teachers are really being intentional about that reading instruction. So if we can just get that leverage across all of our sites, which is really what we need at the primary grades, that's when we'll start to see an increase in the reading scores. I mean, that's really what it takes. It takes kindergarten, first, second grade, strong reading foundation, and then we'll start to see the lift in the upper grades. But that's really where it starts.
Awesome.
So we're doing that this week. Just finished Warford on Friday. So
That's a great glow. I can say when I was at Truman, I think they got their maker spaces earlier in the school year. And
started, now they have a big. It's a whole different setup now.
Oh,
so
really?
We've got new furniture, new chairs in there, and the car. But let me take that back. They just did the opening today, so everybody got a chance to really. It's unveiled, but
I
yeah.
went to Truman. It was good.
Yeah, it is really nice.
So I really like every time I go to Truman, I see some good things. I saw the maker spaces maybe 2 months ago. It was great. It was awesome.
So now we're gonna get the teachers in there and get in there with the kids and really put it to good use.
Yes, ma'am. Any other comments? Okay, let's talk about our grows, area that we want to. Well, let me talk about the glow. You and another director, please feel free to join in if you like. I would say a glow for me has been just working with this committee. When I joined the board and only having a 1-year term, I didn't want to take on this big grand scheme of things that wouldn't be able to be accomplished or be 3 years out. It just kind of leave a pebble. I said, well, I need to find where I can make the greatest impact as quickly as possible. And so kind of targeted on that discipline reform in the handbook. And I think you all working together on those teams. It looks like it's going to be a great product. And so in my 1 year, I can't say I did a bunch of stuff on a bunch of committees or I made these amazing stands, but I can say that I was part of revising the handbook, which will hopefully decrease our discipline referrals, help increase student attendance and achievement, and lead our district to a better place. So that would be my goal, that small area of the handbook. That's what I'm going to hang my hat. until I get reelected. Yeah. Well, okay, so let's like speak to the growth, just an area you feel like you want to make an impact in on moving forward.
Well, for me, obviously, it's seeing an increase in student achievement. I mean, there's a lot of layers to that, directly related to leadership, you know, working with principals in buildings, and how they are then working with teachers and making sure we have the best teachers in front of students. I mean, that's really, you know, the number one support for students is the teacher standing in front of them, and working with the principals to make sure that we are recruiting and retaining our best teachers. And so why do they want to stay here, and why do they want to stay in your building? So that's a big part of the work, especially in a district where, you know, teachers are kind of moving in and out. And so we really have to think about that. But ultimately for me, in curriculum and instruction, it really is about improving student achievement. I mean, that's the number one priority, which is why we're focusing primarily on literacy and making sure we have proficient readers coming out of our primary grades. I mean, that has to be the goal.
For me, I'll have to start with another glow though. That's led to the grow.
Point of order.
Okay, and then this one's not actually even in here because this one is a little bit different. But C&I and Student Service has been working together this year on what we call spell walks. You know, we've had racial equity walks
So spell?
with DELT, and so this year we started what's called SPELL, Special Education and ELL walks, looking and saying, okay, what is the general education students getting, and then looking and comparing that to what the students with a language barrier are getting, and students with some type of academic or emotional or medical, you know, barrier, you know, through special education. And so we've been going to different schools that are targeted and comprehensive in the district, and to be honest, we've had, again, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Rowe, myself, the academic coaches, we've had special education directors, we've had process coordinators, so we've had these walks typically have 15 to 18 individuals on these walks going into different classrooms observing. And so with that, we come out and we create an action plan with everybody together and share it with the principal, get their input. And so basically, here's the grow is we're looking at these action plans, trying to determine how we can narrow that gap between special education and EL as well as we're working with our racial equity. So we're looking at aligning IEPs better with standards. So we're having standard-based IEPs. We're looking at basically making sure technology use is better. There are different things that the principals might want to focus on, maybe, you know, adding a little bit of rigor. So we have been getting some items identified through these walks that curriculum, student services, and the principal have agreed on we want to work on.
Awesome. I think those are both two extremely important areas of success in the school district. Closing that gap, make sure all our students have access to high quality education and student achievement, providing quality educators to make sure students are receiving this and elevate our students. So my challenge or my charge will be to impact these areas for the next school year. We have this last little over a quarter, a little less than a half of school year left to start kind of keeping that in the forefront of our mind. What can we do to make these impacts a reality? So that when next school year comes, or sometimes comes, we can start formulate our plan. So when school year starts next year, these things can be put into action. So we can see a change in student achievement and it's changing and closing that gap. So that's going to be my challenge, charge to you all, for us to do those things that we say we want to do. I think it comes, as you're saying, when the teachers present to the other teachers, it kind of comes, it's a little different. And so I think with these things coming directly from you, maybe it will resonate just a little. Not saying you're not doing your job by any means. It's just because of the personal, that effort or the end result will be that much more impactful. So again, we're gonna hold you accountable for these words that we've spoken on today, and find ways to measure these things and help our students be successful. Any other comments, questions, concerns?
have any comments, but I do think it's important for us to look at our teachers and our staff. Because if the teachers, you can have all these plans, all these things you want to do, but if teachers don't feel encouraged, if they don't feel valued, if they feel that their opinions, they're in the classroom all the time, so they're with the kids all the time and have a better grasp on them. When they feel that their concerns are being discounted, and I think that that's when maybe the lack of motivation. I think when we closed those schools and those teachers were leaving, I don't know if their hearts were really into, when other teachers had to move to other schools, if their hearts were really into teaching because of just, that emotional thing of moving to another place, I think it's important to encourage your teachers, I think that a lot of time is spent on, some of the other things that we do, but I don't think enough time, and I don't think teachers are gonna come and tell you, and complain because, that's another issue. And so, but I think it's important for you to remember that if you gotta have the students, but you gotta have the teachers to teach the kids, and they just need to be,
And we need them to want to be here and want to stay, and so how do we create that atmosphere?
And they wanna feel valued.
Absolutely. And part of that is the pulse survey that we do. It gives us a lot of feedback directly from teachers. And one thing I know that we probably don't get every bit of information we want, but I will say I really appreciate that the teachers will share. I've had teachers email me, and it doesn't come off as a complaint or like they're saying something negative. They're just really sharing an observation or a suggestion or, just their thoughts. And I think that that's important too, because they really are the experts around a lot of what's happening. And so we do want to validate their voices and hear any questions or concerns that they have. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And just to piggyback off of Ms. Director Graves, also, with having them feeling appreciated, also making it a smooth transition in the classroom when it has to do with students.
Students coming in.
They're doing more babysitting than being able to teach the classrooms, having disruptions, and maybe we all can take a look at hopefully making them feel like, hey, if this happens, if I write something, this is going to go forward, instead of just having it linger around. And also, I would like to see us moving into more of accreditation. We're going to have to do
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we've been talking about everything, and we've talked about it, but also I think when you get rid of some of those big things that are attracting or taking away from you getting to that mountaintop, then you see that now that's the reason why you're having more people, a lot of people trying to run on out of here. So we can decrease some of these behaviors and let the teachers feel like, hey, if you write this student up, we're going to take care of it. And that's the end of the discussion. No more.
Right.
We're not going to send them back to your classroom. We're not going to get mad at you because you wrote them up. No, we're going to deal with that. And so now that makes them, hey, man, I feel better now. My principal stood behind me. And then their boss stood behind them. And now we all moving on in the card method. So hopefully, that's two of my charges, hopefully, to see in the comings of the years to come.
I like that. I agree with the sentiments of my fellow board members, and that teacher support is definitely important. And that's what you said it, so you got to do.
It's a tough job.
Are there other questions, comments, or concerns before we move on? Okay, move to item 5.0, future agenda items. 5.1, agenda items to go to the full board. Do you have any items?
The only thing that I'm going to take the full board from here is I am going to have the student service report.
Okay. What is not going to be that thing?
But that's going to go under basically just.
No.
It'll go under superintendent's reports right after my enrollment and attendance report. I'll share a little bit out of here.
1 second.
No, I just want to make sure we're going to
Yes. So with the handbook update, if it comes back from legal before the board meeting, would that be given to
But
the board?
even if, from what you just said earlier in the meeting today, even if we get it back before then you want us the chance, a committee, to look at it, to do revisions and edits prior, so I still don't see it going to the board in February. The earliest would be March.
Okay, we just kind of want the clarification, if it was going to the board first or come to us. So when it comes back from legal, it'll come to the
Then
committee.
To the
the
committee.
committee.
And then at the committee,
Then after
Okay.
you have your edits and all that, you give them back to me, then we'll take it to the full board.
okay.
Yeah.
That'll be in March. Okay. All right. Any other items? Okay, move on to item 6.0, future meeting dates. Finance Committee is February 11th at 5:30. Facilities Committee is February 13th at 5:30. Regular board meeting is February 20th at 6:30. The Policies Committee will be March 3rd at 5:30, and the Education Accountability Meeting will be March 9th at 5 o'clock. So it's 5:15. This meeting is officially adjourned.